Okay. So we are reading Bhagavad Gita, discussing Bhagavad Gita for last few weeks, and we are in the first chapter. We completed few of the verses, and we are today going to discuss from where we had left. That is text number 11 of the first chapter. Few things we discussed was that Bhagavad Gita was spoken on a battlefield 5,000 years ago by Sri Krishna to Arjuna, and they had arrived on a battle because of a property dispute with their cousins, the Pandavas, with 5 brothers. They had a property dispute with Duryodhan, and Duryodhan was not ready to give back the kingdom. So after multiple negotiations, um, they didn't come to a conclusion or compromise. There was a compromise for giving at least 5 villages, let alone the kingdom. But Duryodhan was not ready to give even 5 villages. So then the war was forced. So they collected army and they arrived in in a place called Kurukshetra, which is still there in North India. And the battle was fought in the month of December 5,000 years ago. That particular date is going to come in December, very in the next month. It is called the Gita Jayanti, and it's a Ekadash day. So the battle was fought on that day. In the very first hour, Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and that's what we are discussing. That in the very first hour, Dhritarashtra, the father of Duryodhan, he asked, "What are they doing in a holy place? Are they fighting or not fighting? Are they giving up or not?" So Sanjaya, who is giving live telecast of the whole Mahabharat, sitting in New Delhi, that was Hastinapur, to Dhritarashtra, he had a blessing that he could see the war from far distance. So he was telling what was happening. So he said, Duryodhan, he went to his teacher and he told that you should not become lenient this time and fight. And then he praised Bhishma. He asked the fighters to support Bhishma. And after that, we are sorry. He said that all those who have come here, they are going to die for my sake. So he was thinking everybody is dying for my sake, and that's a great thing. I don't mind anybody killing here. Finally, I want my goal. I want the Pandavas to be defeated and the kingdom be mine forever. So he didn't mind people getting killed for his own reason. And then he was measuring. He was measuring the strength of his army and Pandava's army. So interestingly enough, he said he used 2 words, aparyaptam and paryaptam. So he was saying that ours is immeasurable because our grandfather Bhishma, the great fighter, is there with us. While on the other side, there's Bhima, and he's strong, but not good enough. So that is limited. So the acharyas, the spiritual teachers of the past, have commented on these 2 words, aparyaptam and paryaptam. They say that aparyaptam also means that it is limited. Why? Because there's a in front of it. So anything with a, meaning it is not enough. So it is limited. And paryapta means it is enough. So interestingly, it could mean the other way also. That Duryodhan was saying that, oh, we are limited in strength, while Bhima is not limited. So with this, let's move to the next verse. And if you have any questions, any comments, you can interrupt me and ask.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, okay, tell me. Yeah, Hare Krishna.
So actually, I have one question. So
Mhm.
I mean, actually, two questions. Actually, so first question is like you said that Bhagavad Gita. I mean, spoken for around 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, just want to. I mean, I'm wondering that like in just 45 minutes, and in just 45 minutes, Arjuna asked a lot of questions, and Krishna has given a lot of answers to a lot of questions.
Right.
So I mean, I'm quite wondering that is this just in 45 minutes Arjuna was able to ask so many questions that it can solve our whole life's problems. So,
Okay.
so what do you think about it? I mean, is it? I mean, it's by just hearing that it looks like that it's not practical. Uh, um, so, so
Okay.
I was,
Okay.
yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, Can you give some comments on that?
Yeah, yeah. So we need to understand that in the Vedic times, people were people were more intelligent than today's time. How? The reason was that they could remember what was said. Now we don't remember what was said, what we said, or what we heard half an hour ago. Someone has to remind us. We may have to note it down. But in the previous times, the people were Shrutidhar. Once heard, they would remember. And they were very cultured people. Right now, we are struggling with culture. Anybody thinks anything can be said, anything can be done. So today, people's minds are very disturbed because there are so many disturbances around. There is no peace and all that. At that point, there was a lot of peace. So people were very peaceful. They were very thoughtful. They were very cultured. They could remember things, and they were not just thought about you know um, material science, which today that is the only focus of our education, material science. We may ask any 12th or 10th standard student in India or out of India, other countries, in whatever grade they are, their whole focus is physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, economics, finance, sociology, civil, whatever, hmm, medicine. uh, and if we talk about morality, ethics, justice, not everyone is able to talk very nicely on those subject matters, because our education is only focused on very gross material science. But in those times, people were very thoughtful, and they were taught material science also, and they were taught about morality, ethical, philosophy. They were taught about. So the speech that they spoke was also very fine. It was not useless speech. I wouldn't say useless, but I would say it was not a very rough speech that today we get to hear. You see, even the language today we speak is not very pure. Whichever language we may take, Hindi, or English, there's a mix of two languages. There's a slang words used. So my point to mention is, with very short sentences, those people could tell their point, and they wouldn't waste their time also. So Bhagavad Gita, if one reads at a medium speed, the Sanskrit, it does complete by 45 minutes. Okay, those who are like Sanskrit scholars or Sanskrit reciters, they can finish it by 45 minutes. So that's not a problem. But to understand the hidden meaning in it, to decipher it and all that, we are going to take months and years to understand. By our speed of one lecture per week, we are going to take some time. The question is, in 45 minutes, Arjuna could do it. So the reason was he was not like us. Arjuna was also a very intelligent person. Intelligent in sense, he had a fine character, fine understanding of language, good qualities, and he could grasp what is heard. mm, And
I see.
yeah, so all those things were there um, in those times that helped them, to hear. Now, today, say a computer science student, if he is say educated and he has done his engineering 4 years into it, computer science and all that, now he has a question, he has a problem to face, and some expert comes and tells him that this is the algorithm, this, the algorithm says mathematical something like that, and he shows it, and it all takes 1 hour for him to explain, and then that guy runs and he writes the code and he executes it, and he's out of his, he's able to find the solution for his problem. Now for an external person, one may think, how come in 1 hour he could understand everything? The reason was he was educated previously, and second thing was he was able to grasp this matter, because he had previous knowledge also, and he had those fine skills to understand the deeper aspects of it and how to implement this. So the same thing applies to Arjuna. He was educated in all this knowledge, and he says that in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Smriti Labdha. Oh, I remember now. I have learned all this. Thank you, Krishna, for telling me again. So he tells that in the 18th chapter.
Okay.
So yeah, so now he's going to learn it like, as if he has forgotten.
I see.
For
It was a
us,
beautiful answer, Prabhu.
for
Great.
us, we have never heard it. So for us, at least we are in Indian culture. Some of the things we may relate to, but for those who are in outside of Indian culture, for them it takes even much more time to understand. So so yeah, there's a cultural difference between Vedic times and today's times.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
So it may just take more time, but after some time, when we get familiar to the philosophy, when we get familiar to the spiritual knowledge, then when we touch, Vedanta Sutra, if we read Shrimad Bhagavad or any other Puran like Vishnu Puran or Garuda Puran, and they may contain certain difficult things to understand, any Upanishad or something, very contradictory talk in it. We may be able to understand it because we know the base. We are familiar with Bhagavad Gita. So it will happen to us also. And then, someone else may tell, how could you understand? Well, you need some prior education. So prior education is very important. Unfortunately, in today's our education, it is not there. So if somehow this is children are educated, um, right now it's just the focus is just on Sanskrit language. It is not on the philosophy. So we may have people who can read this very nicely, but not understand this. so, so yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So that needs to change.
Yeah.
Ayaneshu
That-
cha sarveshu. Yeah.
yeah. No, nothing, Prabhu. Just
Okay. Okay.
it's a
Sure.
great explanation, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Beautiful
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. अयनेषु च सर्वेषु यथा भागम अवस्थितः भीष्मम् एवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि. Now Duryodhana is saying to everybody, he has glorified Bhishma, and he said that because of Bhishma we are unlimited, or and we are sufficient enough, But at the same time, he wants everybody to understand that you are also important. You are also important, and you give support to Bhishma. So he says, all of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance in the phalanx of the army. Purport: Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they have been considered less important. So this is anybody speaks, right? There's a hidden motive behind everything one speaks. The motive could be for a good reason, or motive could be for a diplomatic reason, or motive could be for, you know, uh, something, um, what could be some malice or envy, to hurt somebody. So similarly, what Duryodhana was speaking and what is the motive behind, the spiritual teachers have said that he was thinking that others might feel less important. So in a diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man. So everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. he might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhan clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishmadev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishmadev and Dronacharya in the battle, because he well knew that he did not even speak word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in a helpless condition, had appealed for justice, when she forced was being forced to appear naked in the presence of the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performances. So it was a very diplomatic way of handling the situation. And if you see the diplomats of a country, the external ministry, how they speak, how um, how they choose their word, how they make sentences, you know, how they present it. All of this matters in diplomacy. And Duryodhan, as a king and warrior, he knew how this, and he was using that. When others heard Bhishma's glorification, they were happy, but he want others also to understand the situation, and to tell them that you are also important and support Bhishma. So in one line he said everything, and he was confident of Bhishma's and Dronacharya's support, because when Draupadi was being insulted, Bhishma Dev didn't stop it, Dronacharya didn't stop it. So he said, they didn't stop that time, they won't stop here, they will fight for me. Dronacharya was looking for job. So when he got a job in Kaurava, he became very attached to his job. So till the end, in the fear of losing his job, he didn't speak for an insult. He didn't speak against injustice happening to Draupadi. And Bhishma Dev, he tried to explain certain thing to Draupadi instead of saving her. And that was his mistake. Instead of taking action, he just used words. And the words also didn't oppose it. So Duryodhan was confident that this time, they'll be they're on my side only. They're not on the other side. 12. Tasya Sanjayan Harsham. Tasya Sanjayan Harsham Kuru Vriddha Pitamaha Simmanadam Vinadyocha Shankham Dadho Prataptavan. The Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making the sound like a roar of a lion, giving Duryodhan joy. So, if you see in any army today, they are accompanied with a lot of music. They have their own bands and they have their own songs and they have their own music. In the Indian parade, we always see like that. One regiment goes, with that regiment comes its own music band. So today we may use music and all this. I mean, this used to happen in the like 100 years back and all that. Music was part of war and all. The music was not like a simple music, but a music that would give inspiration to fight. In the olden times, ancient times, there were these musicians and they were also accompanied. And there were these conch shells. Conch shells are conch shells found in the sea, and when we blow air in it, it makes a certain sound. And that sound would be heard far away. And each conch shell would produce a slightly different sound, and with that, they could understand who is making that conch shell noise. Today, if we say where are the conch shells, then we hear it on the road when a truck horns it, car horns it, a cycle horns it, or a bike horns it. Same way, the conch shell would identify who is the fighter behind it. So Bhishma had a particular conch shell which would make loud noise, particular, very peculiar, unique noise. You see, so conch shell was the horn, we can say, of that time. If we hear some horn, say a train's horn, we can immediately understand, oh, this is a train's horn. We may not actually see the train, but we can say, yeah, the train is there. If we hear it, we like right now I'm sitting in a room and the window is next to a road. I'm hearing so many horns and I can identify which one it is. So this is how things worked at that time. Each one had its own conch shell. The main fighters, the famous fighters, so they were sounding the conch shells. And Bhishma did that. It also means that intent to fight. I want to fight. It means that. So Bhishma became, Duryodhan became very happy. If finally my one person from my side did it, and he was the first guy to do it. So he became very happy. The grandsire of Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of his grandson Duryodhan. And out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhan that he had no choice, no chance of victory in the battle because the supreme personality of God, Sri Krishna, was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection. So, conch shell is actually held by Lord Vishnu. So, indirectly, Bhishma was thinking that this conch shell blowing is actually a sign of victory for Arjuna, for the Pandavas. Why? Because Lord Vishnu is on the other side, and he is the original carrier of the conch shell. His symbol is the conch shell. So it has multiple meanings. So this was what is going on in the heart of Bhishma. He was giving joy, and at the side, and then he was thinking also, well, this conch shell is actually the original carrier is on the other side. So they will win, not you, Duryodhana. So similarly, after hearing the conch shells, everyone started sounding their conch shells. Like in a traffic jam, everyone starts pumping their horns. Pom, 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 tring, tring. We hear this. So in this battlefield, now everyone started doing that. तथा शंकश्च भैर्यश्च पानवंकः गोमुखः सह सैभव्य हन्ताय स शब्दस्तुमुलो भवत्. After that, the conch shells, the drums, the bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. Okay, it was huge. It was year defining. तथा श्वेतेर हयेर युक्ते महति स्यांदने स्थितौ माधव पांडवश्चैव दिव्यो शंख प्रदत् मतुः. On the other side, Lord Krishna and Arjuna both were stationed on a great chariot drawn by the white horses, sounded the traditional conch shells. So I just brought the picture. So they sounded the traditional conch shells. So this is a conch shell. People use this uh, in the puja of the deities. So Arjuna and Krishna both sounded their conch shell, and it said transcendental conch shell, divyo. Divyo means transcendental. We'll see what that means. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shell in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shell indicates that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of Pandava. Transcendental means superior in this case, superior to everybody. And it was of spiritual nature. It means both superior and spiritual nature. Spiritual nature itself is superior actually to material nature, to material energy. So it was a superior energy by which they were, their council was of superior energy. So that also is indicating that they will win. Jayastu Panduputranam Yesham Pakshe Janardana. Victory is always with persons like sons of Pandu, because Lord Krishna is associated with them. So on whose side is Sri Krishna? That side is winning. This is what the spiritual teachers have said, and the Mahabharata happened the same thing. The Pandavas ultimately win. They ultimately won the war. Um, so why? One may ask, why Sri Krishna is important? Okay, he is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, but why? So why it is always said like this? Jayatu Jayastu Panduputranam Yesham Pakshe Janardana. Why Jaya? Jaya means victory. Why there is a victory when Sri Krishna is? So that is an important subject matter in Bhagavad Gita. In the later chapters, Krishna, he reveals that he is this he is the proprietor, the owner of this whole world, and he's conducting everything. All the energies are under him. So that's when he reveals that he is the supreme Lord. He shows his Virat Rupa, uh, with thousands of eyes and thousands of hands in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and then he proves that he is the supreme person behind everything. So that's why when you have, like, there's a saying, when you have God on your side, you'll always win. So it was like that. Here, the supreme person was with Arjuna, so definitely he's going to win. And we will get into details of how Sri Krishna opens up his own biodata. The later chapters are from 7th to 11 and even 12 are very detailed biodata of Sri Krishna, where he is telling who he is actually. So from the Bhagavad Gita perspective, the most important thing is Sri Krishna. The message is important. Even more important than that is Sri Krishna. How, why, and all is we will discuss as we go further. Therefore, victory and fortune were waiting Arjuna, as indicated by transcendental sound produced by the conch of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, chariot on which both the friends were seated had been donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna. And this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. So the fire god, he had given that chariot to Arjuna. Now you can imagine, it's like a very sophisticated chariot. It's not a simple chariot with just 5 horses taken from here. This is given by fire god. Fire god is one who controls the fire element that is there in the world. He has full control over it, that fire element. Now he gives something from his arsenal, the chariot. So that is very, very powerful thing. Like, America may have very powerful weapons, but when America gives a powerful weapon to any country, the neighbors protest. They say you cannot give. That this person will become too powerful. So when fire god gave the chariot, it had the capability of conquering all sides. Okay. Next verse 15. 137. Okay. Panchajanya Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya Poundram Dad Dadmau Mahashankam Bhima Karma Vikrodaraha. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. So the name of the conch shells had names. Arjuna blew his the Devadatta. Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean task, blew his terrific conch shell called Paundra. Lord Krishna is referred as Rishikesh in this verse because he's the owner of all the senses. Let me jump here. Yeah. So before we go into that, let's go through this one slide of PPT here. Um, so in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there were already signs of Pandavas being, going to win. First was Sri Krishna was there with them. When Sri Krishna is present, Lakshmi is also present with him. So he had the resource, he had the money, he had the goddess of fortune with him. The venue was a holy place, and the effect of the holy place on the war is favorable for the religious personality. And then one of the words will come where the flag had the sign of Hanuman, and we know that Hanuman played a big role uh, in the fight with Ravana. So he was also representing victory. And I told, the conch shell is actually a symbol of Vishnu. So Vishnu was indicating that Vishnu, whose conch shell is the symbol, is on the other side, Duryodhan. He's not on our side. So they will win. We will lose. Transcendental conch shells, superior conch shells, spiritual conch shells. By Arjuna and they were with Arjuna and Krishna. Bhishma's conch shell to pacify Duryodhan. Agnidev's chariot. Yeah, this is what we were discussing right now. That even the chariot was powerful one. And in the 19th verse, hearing all this, the Kauravas became afraid. So if the opponent becomes fearful, becomes afraid, then in most of the cases, they will lose the war. So therefore, if we hear about sports, they have always been psychologically trained that you go with the winning spirit. You don't let your guard down. You don't think that you're not enough. You're going to lose. Don't think all that. Then you will definitely lose. So here what happened is, hearing all the conch shells, the Kauravas felt very afraid. So their fighting spirit was slightly decreased. They fought ultimately, but it was still decreased. So you're fighting with with a fighter whose confidence has gone low. You can think like that. Let's go to the purport. Lord Sri Krishna is referred as Rishikesh in this verse because he's the owner of all the senses. Rishikesh means the owner of all the senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. Now, the living entities, meaning all those who are living in this world, humans, animals, trees, aquatics, reptiles, they are all part and parcel of Krishna. Interesting, right? We are all children of God. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he says this in the 15th chapter. Okay. Yeah, he says this in the 15th chapter. So the spiritual teachers, they give the meaning beforehand only. Mamai vansho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakritisthani karashati. The living entities in this material world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned soul, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So as I said, Krishna is talking about his own skills and prowesses and who he is. In that biodata, he says that all the living entities are my eternal fragmental parts. So because his name is Rishikesh, he could control everyone's senses, and he had the control of all that. Okay. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe the living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs these senses, but he directs in terms of surrender of the living entity. Now, this is all very technical. I'll explain. Uh, Here in the battlefield, the Lord directly controls the transcendent senses of the Arjuna, and thus his name is called Rishikesh. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon called named Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and the senses. His name is Vasudev because he is appeared as the son of Vasudev. His name is Devaki Nandan because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashoda Nandana because he's awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavan. His name is Partha Sarthi because he worked as a charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Rishikesh because he gives direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So various names mean something, and it is interesting that in that culture, a person was called with many names, not just one name, but many names. So we can see here that Krishna is called so many names: Madhusudana, Govinda, Vasudeva, Devaki Nandana, Yashoda Nandana, Parthasarthi, and Rishikesh. And then Govinda, Madhava. These also names of him. In today's world, we may not call a person with many names. We may have some pet name, and that pet name is just given for fun. Um, Not so much related. Sometimes it is related, sometimes it is not. So this was the list. There is some technicality here, technical knowledge here, that Krishna is sitting in everyone's heart and is directing. Now, if he directs, then still people commit mistakes. Why? Because this is the point.
Mommy, Papa, this is Mommy's old mobile.
Yeah.
Okay, take out this. He wants to ask. Arish, you want to take out that?
Sorry. Okay. So why the living entity is not able to take full direction of Krishna, who is sitting in the heart? Because the living entity wants to act independently and therefore doesn't submit fully. So even if direction is given, the living entity is still using his own intuition, his own power, ability to do things. And then he may commit mistakes also because he's not perfect. Like, somebody's learning car and the instructor sits next to him. And the instructor may tell, do this, do that. Sometimes the learner will listen. The more the learner listens, the better it is. But if say the learner doesn't listen and he or she wants to do what they want to do in the car, just because they got an accelerator, they will accelerate it faster, and then they will brake it very hard. There'll be jerks, there'll be sometimes accidents. One may go and hit the wall. So um, so that happens because the living being is not, or say the student is not fully submitting to the teacher. So that full submission is required, and then one can do the right things in their life. So we'll get into details of this in the later chapter. Again, the same concept is going to come: how and why things happen like this, and how we can change, what are the processes of changing it, like that. Okay, so this is not done yet. Arjuna is referred as Dhananjay. Arjuna also has many names. Dhananjay. Dhananjay means one who fetches uh, wealth. Dhananjay. Dhan means wealth. So so he gets lot of wealth for his brother in a particular fire sacrifice. So that's why his name became Dhananjay. Bhima is called Vikrodara. Vikrodara means he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean task. So he was a very big eater. Why? Because Ayurveda says there is fire in our belly or in our digestion, which burns the food that we eat. Okay. So how to understand really there's fire in our body? Well, it's a chemical process. And a chemical process also sometimes produces, smoke and heat, right? Similarly, the chemical process within our body, when all the acids, there are acids within our body, right? They react with the food, they burn it, they decompose, not decompose, but they um, disintegrate. Yeah, they disintegrate it, and then various parts in our body can then squeeze out, absorb the nutrients from that disintegrated food. So that's the process that is happening in our body. So Bhima had the fire. Bhima had a fire which was very, very strong. So he was always feeling hungry. And when when the Pandavas married Draupadi, Pandava's mother, Kunti, she gave instruction to Draupadi and said that, whatever you cook, you divide it into two parts. And one part, 50% of it, you give to this one person, Bhima. And the rest 50% you divide it into four and give it to the four husbands, Yudhishthir, Arjuna, Nakul, and Sahdev. So he was such a eater. He could eat four persons food, you can say like that. And Herculean task like killing the demon Hidimba. So there was a demon Hidimba who was very, very powerful, and Bhima had killed him. So he was known as a Vikrodara. So the various types of conch shells borne by different personality on the sides of Pandavas, beginning with the Lord, are all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other hand, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune. So they were all predestined to lose the battle. And that was the message announced by the sounds of conch shell. So all this conch shells sounding is mostly on the Pandavas side. Which Arjuna, which conch shell Arjuna blew, which conch shell Krishna blew, which conch shell Yudhishthir, and all that. But from the Duryodhan side, only one person's name is mentioned, Bhishma. So all this is indicating that, the Pandavas are going to win. Okay, let's read this one also. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthira Nakula Sahadevascha Sugosha Mani Pushpako Kashyasya Parameshwasha Shikandishya Maharatha Drishtadumno Viratascha Satyakischa Cha Parijitaha Drupado Draupadeyascha Sarvashah Pritve Pate Saubhadrascha Mahabahu Sankham Dadhu Prithak Prithak. King Yudhishthir, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijaya. So King Yudhishthir's conch shell name was Ananta Vijaya. Nakula and Sahadev blew Sughosha and Manipushpaka. Those were the names of their conch shell. The great archer of King Kashi, the great fighter of Shikandi, Drishtadumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the son of Draupadi, and the sons of Draupadi. Draupadi had 5 sons from the 5 Pandavas, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, Ashwatthama. Oh, sorry, is it Ashwatthama? No, Abhimanyu. Sorry, I told the wrong name. So, mighty son of Subhadra is Abhimanyu. All blew their respective conch shells. So, they also had their own conch shells and they blew. It's interesting, at that point they had these conch shells to identify. But in today's world, people also looking for that unique sound by which they want to identify with oneself. Like you may see this trend going on with, when people, youngsters, when they buy motorcycles, they want to hear the firing of the firing sound, Drr, drr. And every bike has a different firing sound, right? And they are attracted to that firing sound. Why? Because they want to identify with themselves with that. So if they are entering some college or entering into their home or something, that particular noise will come, that particular, firing sound will come, and that will announce their presence. so so you can think like, the conch shells announcing the presence of the fighters. Sanjay informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in the great battle, beginning with grandson Bhishma down to grandson like Abhimanyu and others, including kings from the many states of the world. All were present there and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to the king Dhritarashtra because he had encouraged the policy followed by his sons. Now, interestingly enough, this is all said by Sanjaya, who was given the power, to do live telecast. And he is mostly talking about sons of Pandu, the Pandavas. And Dhritarashtra was more interested in knowing what did Duryodhana do, what did do. So few sentences of that, and the rest of the thing he's just talking about the Pandavas. So indirectly he's saying who is going to win. Just think like this: there's a cricket match going on, and then there are two commentators, and one commentator is only talking about um, one team. You know, one only cricketers of a certain team. So indirectly, he's simply mentioning that this team is very strong and is going to win. So it was kind of a discouragement to King Dhritarashtra. Okay, let's read this and then we can stop for some questions or comments. Saghosho dhatarashtanam hridayani vyadrata nabascha prithvim chaiva tumlo abhyanuna nayandan. Sorry. Tumulahu abhyanunadayan. Abhyayunadayan. The blowing of these different conch shells become uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the heart of the sons of Dhritarashtra. So they felt very afraid after hearing the conch shell noises. Hmm? Sometimes we see this in the movie. They show two armies, and then suddenly one army they'll show like getting frightened. So same thing, was happening here, that Dhritarashtra and his sons and their army was kind of frightened hearing Yudhishthir Maharaj and Nakula, Sahadev, Bhima, and Arjuna's conch shells. They got afraid. When Bhishma and others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there were no heartbreaking on the parts of Pandavas. They didn't feel afraid. Pandavas didn't feel afraid. Such occurrences are not mentioned, but in this particular verse, it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sound vibrated by the Pandavas party. This is due to Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. They show greater confidence. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. So those who submit to the Supreme Being, they don't have to fear, even in difficulty. Okay. It's 120. Okay. So we have like 3 minutes left. and this may not be enough to finish this one. That's fine. We can continue next time from 120, 20th verse. If there are any questions or comments, you can ask. Any questions, comments?
Yes, sir. One more question actually I wanted
Yeah,
to ask.
sure, sure.
So, Prabhu, then in the December, the Gita Jayanti is coming, and this is the day on which Krishna has spoken the Bhagavad Gita. But
Yes.
Krishna has spoken Bhagavad Gita later before that also, as well, like to Surya Dev also. I mean, so
Mhm.
why don't we consider those days as well? Is it why it is this day only?
Um,
Is it that we don't know the date or something? I mean, it may be logically, maybe that might be the reason.
um, there are some days which are known, like a day that comes in May. Um, oh, I'm forgetting the technical name. It is the day when the universe was made, by Lord
Uh,
Brahma. It
I
is
see, sir.
called. And sorry, I'm not able to remember that name. But yeah, some information we may not know, and it may be in the other shastras, hmm? And we may be celebrating it. We may be celebrating it, but we may not know.
Okay, okay.
Um,
Mhm.
I'm just searching for that. So yeah, that could be the day. And then you know this knowledge that he told to the previous ones. When we do calculation of that, it goes into millions of years.
Mhm.
So um, so that is also there.
I
Millions
see.
of years. So
Mhm.
yeah. Um,
I think that's okay. I mean, if you
yeah.
don't remember, then that should be fine. I mean, I just out of curiosity, I just asked this. That's why. Yeah. Otherwise, bro, yeah. I mean, so one comment actually,
Sure.
I mean, one positive comment. Like you are explaining very. I mean, even a single word you are explaining, bro. It was really helpful for us also to actually we are able to connect properly. The flow is quite clear that this is now I mean Duryodhan is talking now. The Sanjay is explaining why it is. So it's quite clear
Mm,
in this what's very clear from your side though. I just wanted to
ah,
I'm just
mm,
curious about like is there a place that there we can learn I mean this because the slokas are quite complex to pronounce it. So is it the way or is it a place where we can learn the basics of Sanskrit that what
yeah.
how to pronounce it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the day that I was mentioning is Akshay Tritiya, which comes in the May. So Akshay
I see.
Tritiya is a day when the universe was made and all.
Akshay Tritiya.
So on those days, multiple things happen. And
I see. Okay.
yeah, um, so even the knowledge was given to Lord Brahma to create
Uh,
and all that.
okay. Okay.
So sometimes it could be one day, and then I was talking that this war happened just 5,000 years ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it is a very recent, kind of recent only, and
Hmm.
the date is exactly known.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So you were asking about pronunciation of Sanskrit, right?
Yes. Yes, bro.
Uh, so see on YouTube there is a lot. The one that I like to hear is sacred versus YouTube
Uh,
Gita recitation. There are many actually. Right now there are many. Um, okay. So okay, they have a play. Yeah, they have a playlist here.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay, Bhagavad Gita. I see. Yeah, yeah. That's
yeah.
what. Yeah. Correct.
So I like to hear his. and then you can hear from here, and you know, if you know Sanskrit how to read, fine. Otherwise, you can read this way, which is
Yeah.
kind of an English way. Even
Yeah, but actually, I know some of the. I mean, I know Sanskrit,
you know
but
Sanskrit. Okay, good. Then you don't. You just have to see what he's pronouncing.
yeah,
So
no,
he's a
I mean, certain words are quite difficult. I mean, I'm not very good
okay.
at that. I mean, when I learn in the school, so my sometimes like my
Sure, sure.
school teacher was good, so I
Mm.
know little bit. But sometimes it's very difficult. I like certain words. I were quite asha and all these words. So we are not able to know how to pronounce those kind of words. So like that's why I asked.
Sure. I will include this link in the emails also, and I pasted in the
Yeah.
chat,
Yes,
so
Prabhu.
that can be used.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, all the I think all the chapters are there. So yeah,
Okay.
if you can practice with this, and
Yes.
uh, if Sanskrit pronunciation itself is to be practiced, then I would suggest Sanskrit pronunciation by Nityananda. Uh, there is a Udemy course for that. Let's see.
I see.
Online. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This
Cool.
one is very yeah by this person Nityananda. Okay. Yeah, this one is really good.
I see. Okay.
He does a very good job, even though he's not Indian, but
Huh.
he is able to connect with those who are educated in modern education of English, and
Huh.
so
Mhm.
so using this script,
Mhm.
this is how in this looks English, but actually it is actually you can see those dash and dots.
Yeah.
This
Yes.
is
Yes.
how Sanskrit is written in another language, you can say, which is looking like English. Okay.
English. Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So he uses this to actually help in understand what is the pronunciation behind it, how to
I see.
pronounce it and all. And he himself was trained in Sanskrit pronunciation. So this one I went through, so I would recommend this. But there are others also, and then in India locally also you may find. So
Okay. Okay.
I'll include
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
two. Hmm,
Yes,
okay.
Prabhu. Yes. It's kind of very helpful. Prabhu.
Okay. 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 So let's meet next week, and we'll continue with 1.20.
Sure. Okay.
And let me just stop the recording.